Well, let's return to the story of the GCC summit between the US and Gulf nations. And we're joined by Nadim Shehadi. He's the director of the Fair Center for Eastern Mediterranean Studies at the Fletcher School of Tufts University. Welcome to the program. GCC leaders are unhappy with Iran's conduct in the region. Can Obama's visit bridge the gap, ease tension between the US and Arab nations following the nuclear deal?
Well, the gap, the gap is mainly that of perception. There's a real problem of communications, and there's a crisis in relations. His presence certainly helps, because there's nothing like face-to-face to mend relations. But the gap in communication is still there. There are basically two contradictory perceptions. Obama thinks that the problem is ISIS, and he thinks that the GCC countries are concentrating on Iran being the problem. So it's like a zero-sum game. You have my problem, I have your problem, I have my problem. Can you help me with mine? I'll help you with yours. That's not the way it works. For the GCC, in reality, the problem is both ISIS and the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, which are the militias that Iran supports. So these two radical movements, by fighting each other, make each other stronger. So the problem is both movements. It's both ISIS and the IRGC, and not either one or the other, and you have to make a choice between the two. And that's what I think the US administration does not get or does not really understand in the concerns of the GCC. They are certainly very concerned about ISIS. They are far more concerned about ISIS than anybody else in the world, because ISIS targets them as the mainstream. And ISIS gains power by fighting the Revolutionary Guards of Iran, the militias like Hezbollah, like the militias in Syria, like the militias in Iraq. And ISIS gains popularity by fighting these militias.
Now, Saudi Arabia is playing host to this summit, and tensions have been, relations have been frayed between the US. The Obama administration has said it is going to veto this bill, which is likely to be passed through Congress, which threatens to hold the Saudi government for any alleged involvement in the 9/11 attacks. Of course, Riyadh has always denied involvement. How damaging could this be to the United States if Saudi Arabia sells off its assets in the US, which it is threatening to do?
Well, Saudi Arabia did not threaten to withdraw the assets in retaliation. Saudi Arabia mentioned, that's what the foreign minister mentioned. The foreign minister said, we have investments. These investments will no longer be secure if they are threatened by court action. So the rational thing to do from an investment perspective is to withdraw these investments from a very risky situation. So I think that's another miscommunication. It's not a threat by the Saudis, and it's not a quid pro quo. And I think the Saudis have indicated in many instances that they would like those documents released and to clear the story about September 11 and about the relationship with Al-Qaeda, because in reality, they are the most concerned and the most threatened. The fact that there were so many Saudi citizens involved in terror operations doesn't mean that Saudi supports it. It means that Saudi is the most threatened by it, because it's an internal movement that's gaining strength and aims to topple the royal family there. That's their main target. Al-Qaeda and ISIS do not want to take over Tehran. They want to take over Riyadh and Mecca.
Okay, Nadim Shehadi, good to talk to you. Thank you.